This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman.
This is George Newbern, the voice of Superman.
And you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 353 of the DCAU Review. I'm Liam, joined as I always am by Cal. And Cal, here we are at the finale of our Elseworlds Finest Month. And, we had visited an alternate Metropolis and an alternate Gotham the week before that. So now we got to get the two boys together and have a grand bombastic finale. We needed a team up to go out on it, and we got a big Titanic, a rare movie feature-length review here on the show for us, because these reviews are hard to do because they take up forever. So here we are, the finale of Elseworlds Finest Month, and it's a big one, and it's an exciting one.
That's right, Liam. Honestly, we mentioned it last week. This is one that I kind of had penciled in, or I know that we had penciled in and talked about way back when. I feel like maybe even around the time that we did the Under the Red Hood review. And I feel like sometime after that, we realized that, these reviews end up being a little bit more involved, and it is a little bit more difficult to apply our criteria to a feature-length film, take involved notes, and then recap everything and talk about every single thing that happens in a 77-minute or 64-minute production. So, but you know what? As you mentioned, it's Elseworlds Finest Month. We're going out with a big one to wrap up our celebration of the Man of Steel and the Dark Knight. And we're doing so with the 2009 movie Superman, Batman, Public Enemies, which is based on the really one of your favorite comic book runs of all time, that being a story originally written by Jeph Loeb with art by Ed McGuinness. And they took this story, adapted it. We'll talk about some of the credits here in just a second, who was tasked with this Herculean effort to adapt not only a really interesting but really involved story into animation, but also really the defining traits of the really unique styles of Mr. McGuinness's animation as well. But excited to tackle that with you today, Liam. And we will, of course, tackle it and get our official IMDb synopsis from you in a second. Before we do, I will let the folks at home know this originally was released here in the United States September the 29th. 2009. And before, of course, we get into that IMDb synopsis, we will once again remind the folks at home that our IMDb synopsis today is brought to you by buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. Buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review is the place to go if you wish to support the podcast. If you want to help us out, if you want to let us know that we're doing a good job, or maybe you want to let us know that we're doing a bad job and still support the podcast, that is the avenue and the easiest way to do so. Head over there today. You can become a one-time supporter of the podcast, or you can become a monthly supporter of the pod. We've got multiple levels of podcast support at your disposal, including our Super Friend tier, and our Super Friend tier is our top supporter tier. When you join us at a Super Friend tier, you get all of the perks that we offer on every other level. Every level has a perk, but the Super Friend tier has the tippy top perks, of course, which include our question of the week and the option to ask the pod a question of your own about the subject about which we are reviewing that episode. We will get to our question of the week a little bit later today, but we invite you, if you want to support the growing number of supporters of the DCAU review, head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review and support the podcast today.
Absolutely. So with that out of the way, we will get to the official IMDb synopsis for Superman/Batman Public Enemies, which is written by Stan Berkowitz, adapted from the 6-issue of the comic book by writer Jeph Loeb and artist Ed McGuinness, directed by Sam Liu, music by Christopher Drake, and animation by Lotto Animation. And that synopsis reads as such. When Lex Luthor gets elected U.S. president, he uses the threat of an oncoming kryptonite meteor striking Earth as a rationale to frame Superman. All right, not bad.
Yeah, not bad at all.
I think that's a good. It's a non-spoilery. That basically is the premise about the first 15 minutes. So, and with it being a movie, we're not going to go like scene by scene because again, we'd be here for 90 minutes just on the plot recap if we did that. But yes, suffice to say, this is as mentioned, as we've talked about, adapting a very popular comic book storyline by Jeph Loeb and Ed McGuinness. Probably one of our favorites from childhood, honestly, the first 6 issues of the ongoing Superman Batman comic of that era. And yeah, this was like the one thing that I think immediately I noticed about this, and this we can get into this, like Lex Luthor had been president in the main comics continuity for like 5 years when this storyline happened in the comics. So they didn't have to set up Lex becoming president, which is an immediate thing that like this movie needs to do because it's its own standalone thing. So so as we open up, we see the markets are in free fall. There's civil unrest everywhere. Military might is being used to suppress American citizens, and then we find out that Lex Luthor is running as a third-party candidate to right the wrongs and bring the nation together. And after a little bit of after our title sequence where we get the name of the movie, turns out he won, and at least at the start, it seems like he's kind of put things back together. We see his inauguration where he has enlisted certain superheroes to be official U.S. government agents and declares that no one is above the law and that he expects all superpowered beings to sort of fall in line. And if not, he will knock them out of the sky, so to speak. And we see his team includes Captain Atom, Katana, has a magic sword, she's got his back, etc. Black Lightning on this team, Power Girl, Major Force, and Starfire. And so we see Superman stopping a speeding car in Metropolis, and he's immediately confronted by Captain Atom and Major Force and Power Girl, who tried to enlist him and tell him that, hey, Lex isn't such a bad guy.
Told you this would be a waste of time.
Luthor did the one thing nobody was expecting. He made things boring again. And boring's good, isn't it? The economy's back to normal, crime's down, there are no wars or anything.
He's up to something. Can't anybody see that?
That's what I thought at first. But eventually I realized all he's trying to do is put that formidable intellect to work doing such a good job. No one will have a choice but to respect him. It's all about ego now.
I'll never respect him. He's a sick man. He's not the first to sit in the Oval Office.
He's right. There have been womanizers, drunks, crooks. But Nixon helped turn our worst enemy into our best trading partner. And Johnson gave us the Voting Rights Act.
Thanks for the history lesson, but I'm not buying it.
Come on, work with us. Please? We need you.
Sorry.
I guess Luthor's not the only one with an ego.
And here we get we talk about the ultimate, like, Deus Ex Machina plot device. An asteroid is about to hit the Earth, but not just any asteroid. As we find out inside the White House that they are monitoring a giant kryptonite asteroid that is headed towards the Earth, with Lex noting that planet of Krypton has been nothing but pain for him in his life. But his advisor Amanda Waller asks him about potentially bringing in Superman or some of the other superpowered heroes that haven't yet come to heal under the might of Lex's U.S. government. But he blows her off at first, saying that there's absolutely no need for this because done the calculations themselves, and they're just going to shoot missiles into space and blow up the asteroid. And that'll solve that. Amanda sort of tries to plead to him, tries to be like the voice of reason, saying that, hey, don't let your personal biases against some of these costumed heroes stop you from asking for help. And Lex seemingly agrees, and he says, you know what, you're right, we do need a backup plan. And we cut then to Superman, who has made it to the Batcave, and him and Batman are discussing a few things. And then we hear a broadcast from the president where he announces this kryptonite meteor is coming towards Earth, and that he is pleading to meet with Superman in order so that they might come up with a plan together. And that's when Superman reluctantly agrees, and he heads off to meet Lex.
And I want to assure all Americans and all the citizens of the world that I intend to handle this meteor with the same efficiency that characterized my previous endeavors. But, as a precaution, I'd like to meet with Superman as soon as possible. It's time to bury our rivalry once and for all, and work together for the good of mankind.
This is one time he's not lying. About burying the rivalry? I don't think so.
No, about the meteor. I've been following it the last few days with my own instruments.
I could go up there in a lead suit and smash the thing.
There's no amount of lead that could keep out so much radiation. And it wouldn't stand up to all that smashing either.
Got anything better?
I'm working on something with one of my contacts. You're going to go ahead and meet with him, aren't you?
You know me too well. I can't just stand back and do nothing.
Well, when it all goes south, don't count on me to save you.
I won't. I know you pretty well, too.
Lex sort of hits him with his business proposal, so to speak, that Superman would work for him, immediately just twisting the knife, trying to burn Superman and make him bend the knee, so to speak, in the interests of protecting the world from this asteroid. But as Superman approaches Lex, as they're having this dialogue, he begins to feel weak and realizes there must be kryptonite somewhere nearby. And as he grabs Lex by the lapels, we see that one of Lex's Secret Service agent is not your rank and file soldier or government official, as he springs in to attack Superman.
That's right. It's revealed very quickly here that this is Metallo, who Lex has hired to be one of his Secret Service agents and bodyguards at that point. And it turns out, as to coin a phrase, it's a trap. And we learned very quickly this version of Metallo is much more like he's like a cybernetic transformer, kind of like I think more of like a Terminator type, that he can kind of mold and bend his different appendages into different weapons very quickly. So Superman and Metallo have a quick but vicious scuffle, and he knocks Superman out of the way into a graveyard. Their battle continues, and just when it looks like that Superman is a bit overwhelmed, the Dark Knight swoops in and begins to aid Superman in the battle. Batman holds his own as much as he can against this very overpowered robot man, and a weakened Superman does his best. Also, together they work. The Dark Knight and Superman work together to attempt to stop Metallo. It seems like that they're having some success in doing so. Batman throws a batarang directly into Metallo's kryptonite heart, which initially seems to slow him down, but in fact, all it does is break off a shard of the heart, which Metallo grabs off the ground, picks it up, forms it into a bullet, which he changes shifts his hand into a gun shape, fires the now kryptonite-shaped bullet directly at Superman, hitting him in the chest. And Batman is able to quickly, at that point, use some explosives to seemingly take down Metallo for a period of time. Superman stumbles backwards into an open grave. Batman is working very hard at that point with a disassembled Metallo to try and remove the kryptonite bullet from Superman's chest before his chest heals over top of it. He's using his tweezers. Thank God that utility belt had a pair of tweezers. He uses a pair of tweezers. As Superman remarks, Metallo is very quick to actually reform and reassemble. And just as Batman seems to be grasping the kryptonite bullet, he notices there's some dirt that seems to be falling on his back, and looking up, Metallo is there. He shifted his arm into a giant excavator shovel and buries Batman and Superman alive in the grave. They are, however, it is not over for our Caped Crusader and Man of Steel, as Superman is able to use some of his strength to hold up some of the dirt. They then use explosives, afraid, or at least using their brains, noting that they would not be able to overwhelm or overcome Metallo with a weakened Superman in this state. So they're not going to go back out through the top of the grave. They're going to go through the bottom of it and kind of blast their way down into the sewers. So they're able to do so and escape.
Bruce. It's not ending here. I won't let it.
I thought I was supposed to rescue you.
There might still be time for that. Can we get to your cave from here?
Eventually. Time for you to see my side of the world.
Some company you keep. Come on, Bruce. Stay with me. You know who I was thinking about the other day?
Who?
The Magpie.
The criminal?
Do we know another Magpie? Whatever happened to her?
She died.
No. Are you sure?
Reasonably.
Why is it the good villains never die?
Clark, what the hell are good villains?
And as Batman and Superman wander their way through the sewers, we cut back to the graveyard where Metallo sees a figure in the shadows. He recognizes him, and that is the last we see of Metallo. As whoever it is that he sees is not quite revealed. They wind their way through the sewer tunnels to get to the Batcave, enough in time for Alfred to actually perform some surgery on Superman to thankfully remove the bullet before any further damage is done. And then he even goes as far as to repair Superman's costume as well, which is great. So we then we then see Superman join Batman at the Bat computer, where he is watching some footage of Lex Luthor on the television, making an announcement from the Oval Office that Superman is now being declared an enemy of the state, or I guess enemy of the country at this point. As we see, he has used doctored footage, surveillance footage from their meeting to make it look like that Superman attacked him unprovoked. And then we see that they have actually recovered Metallo's body. He's been completely eviscerated. He accuses Superman of murdering an old foe that was looking to turn his life around. Luthor compares himself to Metallo, saying that he too was once on the opposite side of Superman, so he now fears for his own life, that Superman is on a rampage. So he announces that there will be a $1 billion bounty on the head of Superman, and this sets off a interesting next portion of our movie here. So Superman and Batman decide that they have to figure out what happened to Metallo to see if they might be able to prove Superman's innocent, seeing as how Batman is the only witness able to corroborate Superman's story that he did not kill Metallo. And clearly Batman's not likely to be a reliable witness in the eyes of the law. So they set out to Star Labs, where they are looking to find more information about the meteor and potentially where Metallo is being kept. They do stumble upon Metallo's remains and notice that there is Batman pulls out a Geiger counter thing and a scanner and notices that there's a lot of radiation, noting that Superman's heat vision could not be implicated solely on this basis because his heat vision is not radioactive. And at this point, they are interrupted with their search, and they begin to make their escape. Superman remarks that now it does look like, now that he showed up and is handling the remains of Metallo, that it does look like he is implicated as potentially a guilty party at this point. But he does his best with Batman in tow to escape Star Labs and their security guards.
Now I really do look like a criminal.
It's done wonders for me.
But how do we get the data now?
There's one other possibility.
The next little portion here is just a who's who of DC rogues shows up to in an attempt to collect the bounty. The first one that we see is Silver Banshee, who attacks Superman, and in pretty vicious fashion. She and Superman are flying around. Batman is separated from Superman, and we see an army of ice-themed villains show up. We see Captain Cold, Icicle, Killer Frost, and Mr. Freeze all pop up. Batman is doing his best to handle them 4-on-1, while Superman is flying further and further and closer to out of the Earth's atmosphere with Silver Banshee in tow. He's able to bring her out of the Earth's atmosphere, causing her to pass out. And while Batman is temporarily frozen, he's able to radio to Superman to bring the heat, as he says, and Superman drops some heat vision down and not only frees Batman, but knocks out all the ice-themed villains. And just when Superman lands with Silver Banshee, Batman does have a device that'll keep her incapacitated. They turn and look, and they are greeted by a rather large pair of large men who are emerging from the shadows, except they're not men. They're monsters, or a monster and an alien, or an undead man and an alien. It's
a zombie and an alien controlled by a magic gorilla walk into a bar. I mean,
a tale as old as time, as we like to say on the podcast. Yeah, it is indeed. Solomon Grundy and Mongol, as you mentioned, them along with Nightshade are all being mind controlled by Gorilla Grodd. Batman notices immediately that there's something off by the way that Solomon Grundy is talking. Superman remarks that he heard a gorilla's heartbeat in the area, which I thought was a great little, that just sounds like something you would hear in a Fleischer Superman cartoon. Like he knew that there was a gorilla nearby because their heartbeats sound different than like a human's heartbeat. I loved that bit.
Mongol wasn't his usual talkative self.
And Grundy sounded like William F. Buckley.
You think there's some kind of mind control going on? A telepath, or maybe a
Nightshade.
Interesting. Even the lesser ones have some value when their powers are put to the proper use.
I know that speech pattern.
Top of that building!
Grodd, of course.
Had to be a telepath. I heard a gorilla's heartbeat.
But they're able to take them down, but then they just when they think that they're out of the woods, they of course are not, as we see an even larger group of villains emerge. So we have some more fighting that ensues here. Batman and Superman are able to emerge victorious and escape. Thankfully, with the help, it seems, of an arriving Captain Atom, who shows up with the rest of the Lex crew, including Major Force and Power Girl. And they announce at that point that they're not here to lend support to the Man of Steel. They're actually here to place him under arrest. And they themselves, everyone except Power Girl, so it includes, we have Major Force, we have Captain Atom, we have Black Lightning and Starfire. They all do their best to subdue Batman and Superman. Power Girl abstains at that moment, but Superman is able to escape, creating a super hurricane. He flies around, or super tornado, flies around, and is able to create enough wind speed to cause some of our heroes to lose gravity and fly away. And Batman and Superman are able to escape with Power Girl in tow. And we get a little 1-on-2 here as Power Girl does explain some of the information that she has as far as insight that she has when she's dealing with Lex. She says that her skin crawls when she's interacted with him, despite her earlier pledge that he seems to have made things better. And she knows that Superman didn't kill Metallo. But at this point, the rest of Lex's crew shows up and they begin fighting. They accuse Power Girl of treason. And Power Girl does, though, aid Superman and Batman in being able to overtake and take on the rest of this crew here. So much so that Power Girl actually causes Major Force to erupt when she intervenes. She hits him hard enough in the stomach that his suit begins to leak, and he begins to explode. So that causes.
Yeah. And we also get the revelation here that as the fighting is going on, Batman calls out to Major Force and asks and accuses him of being the one to kill Metallo. Of course, him being Major Force is a character who's just. He's like if Captain Atom was a psychopath.
Mm-hmm.
So he's also a nuclear man in like a containment suit with a flat top. He's just red and yellow instead of silver. So yes, Batman points the finger at him, and it takes about 15 seconds for Major Force to just straight up admit to it, though he claims he's doing it for to put,
Batman does a
put
great
his
job
country
of
first.
Yeah, Batman goads him into
Yes.
it. It's very clear.
Yes, he points out the utter fallacy that Major Force would be doing any of this for his country or to support the president when it's clear he's just a psycho who wants to kill. And that's, as you mentioned, when Power Girl jumps in there and knocks in an attempt to knock the wind out of him, accidentally tears a hole in that old containment suit.
Yeah, good point. Thanks for bringing that up. That is a big point there of contention. And big plot point that would have been overlooked if I not mentioned. So after Major Force begins to erupt, Captain Atom and Black Lightning work together to not only contain but then absorb Major Force's nuclear energy. And he does so. Major Force is no longer an issue. Captain Atom does appear to be somewhat injured, but he does believe at that point that maybe something is amiss with the president. And we cut back to Lex at that point, who is thinking, Liam, he's going to be just basking in his glory now, as we learn that the meteor is close enough. His plan to shoot missiles at it is going to work properly. He's going to be the hero. Superman is on the run and in the eyes of the public, an enemy of the state, but hoped and thought that they would here in this missile launch in an attempt to save the world.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. And they're on their way. Wormhole generator engaged. Closing on target. Don't worry. I'm not going to say I told you so.
Good thing.
General, what the hell happened? We didn't take into account all that radiation. It detonated the warheads before they hit. So the meteor is still on course.
Yeah, that's right. Things surprisingly do not go as planned. The plan to shoot big missiles at an asteroid in space does
Which
not
is
work
definitely a
out.
plot from like an 80s or 90s movie, right? Isn't there that
Yeah,
Bruce Willis movie where they were
yeah.
gonna
There's two. Yeah, so there's two asteroid movies that come out in like the same summer. One is Armageddon, and one is Deep Impact. And one I think they shoot missiles at the moon, and the other one they send like a drilling construction
That's
team
right.
to the asteroid to try to blow it up from
I saw
inside.
the one with Bruce
Um,
Willis in the construction team, I think.
yeah, that one's good. And if you've ever been on Twitter for any length of time, you've probably heard the clip of Ben Affleck's commentary track where he just talks about how stupid the movie he's in is, which is probably worth the price of admission as on its own. So you can probably find it on YouTube too. There's probably a compilation.
Lex got his ideas strictly from one of those two movies.
From Michael Bay movies in the 90s. Where else would you get? He keeps insisting that he's done the calculations himself. It's also clear that he's getting a little bit out of sorts. There is a scene, as mentioned, we already mentioned that Power Girl was having some doubts, and we noticed there's a scene where she goes to talk to Lex in the Oval Office earlier, where we see a mysterious green syringe in Lex's desk drawer, though we don't quite know what that means until after the missiles do not work. Lex excuses himself back to his private lab or office, and as Amanda Waller walks in, we see that he is shirtless, and Lex is jacked, man. He is even by the standards of how everyone is jacked in this movie, because it's aping Ed McGuinness' style of art. He is massive and getting bigger as he tells Amanda Waller that he's been injecting himself with a mix of good old fashioned anabolic steroids and also liquid kryptonite at the same time, which is interesting because they make a point of claiming earlier one of Lex's justifications to try to get people to believe that Superman killed Metallo is that, well, the kryptonite must have a psychological effect as well on him, and that's why. And now we see that Lex has been literally injecting this into his blood. Radioactive space rocks have been coursing through Lex's veins for he says since right before he took office. So he is he begins to appear quite mad, and as Amanda Waller tries to appeal to him and tell him that they could still act and still save the world, Lex has decided that's no longer what he wants, as he plans on letting the asteroid hit the Earth, allowing hundreds of millions, if not billions, of people to die, and that whatever planet is left after that, he will proudly lead the survivors into a brave new world. And because he lets this happen, he believes that will also keep any survivors from ever believing in the so-called superheroes again. And as all of this is happening, we see Power Girl, Superman, and Batman arrive outside of this army base somewhere in the desert. Power Girl is sent off on another mission by Superman and Batman, so she flies off, and as Batman and Superman begin to approach it, they're attacked by two other superheroes that are apparently under the Luthor payroll, that being Hawkman and Captain Marvel. Not that one.
It doesn't take the wisdom of Solomon to know you should stay down.
Tell me something, Captain Marvel. Would Solomon have gone to work for Lex Luthor?
Batman, don't make this any more difficult than it has to be.
Shazam, the power of Shazam coursing through his veins as he and Hawkman fight Batman and Superman respectively. There's quite a bit of tussling as it's pointed out that Superman has trouble with magic. So they do the old-fashioned switch dance partners move, where Batman sort of takes it to Captain Marvel. Too many captains in this movie, quite frankly. Can we make him Admiral Marvel, perhaps, or something, just to change up we have a major, a captain. We need a third, a sergeant Marvel. I don't know, just something. We need a different title. Anyway, Eventually, it appears that maybe Captain Marvel and Hawkman have gotten the best of Batman and Superman. He pulls the old Shazam trick on Batman, and Hawkman has a big magic electro glove that punches Superman off into the mountain range. So seems like our heroes are on the ropes. And as we head back inside, we should also mention that as Lex is explaining his evil maniacal plan, he also kisses Amanda Waller somewhat forcefully and implies she has a role in his new kingdom. So she is kind of still trying to reason with him and is sort of reckoning with the fact that the president has lost his marbles, quite frankly. We see Hawkman and Captain Marvel arrive, or at least we think it's them. But as we step out of the shadows, it's the old switcheroo. As Superman has put on Captain Marvel's suit, and Hawkman has put on or Batman has put on Hawkman's suit so that they can get close to Luthor. They threaten to threaten him, and he seemingly acquiesces that he's going to give them the plans and his calculations on how they can still stop the robot or stop the asteroid. But before he does, he does the old computer delete all files trick, and that seemingly leaves Superman and Batman without much chance. Except here's where Amanda Waller finally makes her big stand and calls or reveals that she has made a copy of Lex's files. And so Superman and Batman take those off and head off to Tokyo to meet up with the only other person perhaps on Earth who can possibly save the world at this point. And as Waller instructs that one of the generals on site to arrest the president, we're really getting into fantasy now. Lex runs away and gets into he gets into the superpowers action figure suit and flies off himself. So here we see where Batman and Superman arrive in Tokyo at a giant factory, and they meet a young boy genius. It's basically Jimmy Neutron, but it's a Japanese young man named Hero, who actually prefers to go by Toy Man, and he has a plan to save the day, as it were, that doesn't involve shooting missiles. He comes up with a equally ridiculous sci-fi movie plot instead.
That's right. And please remember, this was originally a 6-issue miniseries. So if you feel like we went on quite the roller coaster here, remember in the original story, you had 6 issues to build to this climax. So Hero, who is heavily implied to be a perverted young 13-year-old that is obsessed with Power Girl, is excited to see Superman and Batman arrive there. Power Girl greets Superman and Batman. She also notes that she's very uncomfortable being around Hero, so she's going to hang back. Batman and Superman are talking with Hero, who does reveal his plot. He's not going to shoot missiles at it. I mean, that's ridiculous. No, he's going to launch a gigantic mech robot suit towards it, and it's going to fly into it and destroy it. He does have the benefit of knowing the radiation levels, thanks to Waller, who provided that to Batman and Superman, despite as you mentioned, the attempt for Lex to shield that from them. So they provide him with the specs. He notes that it does have manual controls, but it's not going to be needed because he's going to be able to remote control it directly from his computer, just as he's preparing and inputting all the data in order to protect the suit. Arriving there at the factory, having learned that... how did Lex learn that they were headed to Tokyo?
It's implied that, I believe, they mentioned that he's already aware that Hero is an option. Amanda's still trying to appeal to him. Because she says, like, what about the boy in Tokyo? Maybe he can be of some assistance or something. And he kind of blows her off. But
that's right. And we learn why here shortly, because Hero touts that he has a 210 IQ. So he's a 12th level intellect, I suppose. And he's there, as I mentioned, preparing the robot suit, which I didn't mention, but it is modeled after the old composite Batman Superman design from the 50s, 60s. When was that? If you want to enjoy some hilarious if you're not familiar with composite Superman, check it out. Google it. It's literally a character that is half Batman, half Superman. They get merged together, I feel like, in a storyline of some kind. So this mech suit resembles it's half Superman, half Batman.
Que pasta?
Is it ready, hero?
Toyman to you. I got a copyright to protect. And yeah, it's ready. All I need is some numerals.
Everything you need's in here.
Excellent! I'll input him, and then it's blast-off time. Hey, did you guys see Power Girl when you came in? If you see her again, tell her I'm sorry about the X-ray goggles. I was just testing him, that's all. Now I gotta rebuild him from scratch.
Here, Toyman, can we please see the rocket now?
Sure. I didn't have a lot of time, so I based it on a design I whipped up when I was 7. That's why it has manual controls, even though it's not going to need a pilot. Oh, one other thing. Back when I designed it, I was way into hero worship.
You're absolutely sure this is going to work?
Does Power Girl have big...
Just feed it the numbers, kid.
You got it.
So as he's inputting the specs, Lex arrives at the factory. He quickly does away with Power Girl, leaving Superman to come to her rescue. Superman begins taking on Lex. Lex's suit, of course, is powered by kryptonite, which causes Superman to be relatively weak throughout the battle. Batman is doing his best to try and figure out what the next steps are going to be. Lex interrupts Hero. He's able to disable Batman and Superman through the chaos enough to get to Hero. And as he realizes that what Hero is set to do, he destroys Hero's computer. That way he won't be able to remote it into the meteor. Lex becoming more and more unhinged as the fight goes on. Superman is able to recover. Batman realizes their only hope at this point is he must pilot the suit towards the meteor. Superman does his best to stop Batman, but Batman insists that this is the only way, so he climbs in, manually launches the suit, and despite Lex doing his best to keep the launch from occurring, he is unsuccessful as Superman and him continue their battle. Batman launches the suit towards the meteor and is bracing for impact as Superman eventually is able, after a fierce battle that takes him from Japan all the way back to Metropolis, is able to disable Lex, eventually knock him out, and is able to overtake him. Just as he looks up, Batman pilots the suit directly into the meteor, causing it to explode. And then Superman realizes that Batman, unfortunately, has likely not survived the impact and decides he's going to take it out on Lex. So he does everything to disassemble the suit.
You can't touch me. We're on American soil now. And I am the president.
Consider yourself impeached.
Superman. Looks like I recovered a little too late.
Forget about that. I got a message from Toyman. He says that there's still a chance.
And he's able to collect the only thing that survived the impact, I guess, which is the hybrid Batman-Superman symbol, which just so happens to be the logo from this comic book series at the time. So the Superman, or the Batman symbol with the Superman logo emblazed over top of it. Not all that different than the Batman v Superman logo. So it itself was the cockpit of the ship, and Superman is able to safely bring it back down to Earth, and is greeted with a lot of celebration from the people of Earth, and specifically the people of Metropolis. Superman is able to get Batman out, who is there and thankful, certainly, for Superman's help.
The voice of the people must be heard. I am the president. God bless America. God bless me.
I have a feeling I'm not going to have to worry about that murder charge anymore.
Would have been an interesting trial, though.
Want to stick around for a while? Lois and I can't. It's late. Late? Come on, it's early.
Unfortunately, the Dark Knight has disappeared at that point, and that leaves us with our hero Superman embracing the love of his life, Lois Lane, there on the building. And we roll credits, Liam.
That's right. So, as I think you alluded to here, Cal, it's very hard to take 6 issues of a comic, not to mention, as we said, like 5 or 6 years of backstory leading up to that comic series, and truncate that and condense it all into a 75-minute movie. So I do think this is like, it moves a mile a minute. That's kind of what I felt like. I almost feel like you feel like you're getting whiplash. It's a pretty faithful adaptation of those 6 issues. They tweak some things a little bit, like there was no like Metallo murder plot, and there's also stuff in the comic storyline that didn't make it into this. Like at one point in the Batcave, they get attacked by what appears to be the Kingdom Come Superman, who's trying to prevent some terrible future.
Right.
There's a bunch of extra stuff.
I said the Bat family's there.
Yes.
You get Superboy and
yes, there's a scene where they all break into the White House to try to rescue Batman and Superman, who they believe have been captured. So yeah, there's just so much stuff from those comics that, like, I think they did as good a job, not that I don't like a lot of those elements, but trimming the fat to make this what it is.
Sure.
But it's still like, it's very action heavy, which is fun. We'll certainly talk about that in visuals in a moment here. But it's just boom, 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 boom. Lex is the president. Boom. Superman gets attacked by Metallo. We have that big fight. Then he gets shot. Then they're underground, and then we're almost immediately cut into the next fight scene. It feels like about every like 3 minutes something. Is that what everyone says about the first Momoa Aquaman movie, that like every 5 minutes something explodes,
right,
or something like that? That's kind of what this feels like to me. Like, and it's like, all right, then we're going to Star Labs, and then all the villains attack, which is again very iconic scenes from the comic book run. It's one of the reasons I think that is such an iconic in the same way that the Hush comic is iconic, because for, among other reasons, Jim Lee is just drawing every single important Batman character over those 12 issues. This is like Ed McGuinness got to draw like every character, big and small, relevant and some deep cuts across these issues, like all of these different heroes and villains and stuff. And I think they do the best they can to juggle it all, but like working in the Metallo, I do like the idea of having a more direct reason. I think in the comic, it's just Lex just blames the asteroid coming to Earth on Superman, and that's his justification for declaring him a fugitive. So I like the idea of like he's actually been properly framed for, a crime where you could see like, yeah, you could probably trick people into thinking that Superman killed somebody, especially if Lex Luthor is the president.
Right.
If Luthor was the government, as someone once said. So yeah, like I think so there's elements that they've tweaked that I like, and then but I feel like the thing that really just stuck out with me, it's like when we jump straight from Lex is taking kryptonite steroids and has lost his mind to we're going to Tokyo, and a 13-year-old boy has built a giant Superman Batman mech robot to fly into the asteroid. Even though that all happens in the comics, it's still just like, again, feels a little like Whiplash to do it all in one 70-minute movie. So that's like I like it, but it's just the pacing, because it has to be, is just bing bang boom. Like it's just really, it's so focused on getting to like our next big action set piece, it feels like.
No, it definitely is, and it is heavy on the action. I mean, of the runtime, a significant portion is bodies banging together, heads being smashed, fists flying, explosions and stuff happening. So to your point, yeah, it is. I think from the point that they leave Star Labs and we see the Metallo like remains, it's almost straight up action pieces with like a ever unraveling Lex Luthor dialogue piece kind of spliced in between there in a couple of places. So it is a lot of action to wrap things up. So yeah, I think to your point, like it does feel like a weird way to solve this. And I always, honestly, like as much as I love those comics, I did always think it was a little bit weird that was the choice, was this use of this version of Toyman in Japan is the reason, or the way that they solved the problem. It feels just kind of very, I don't know. He just seems like such a minor character, such a shoehorned in piece here. It's like, there's all these other heroes that you could have tapped on to like maybe help solve the issue, or, Batman puts his head together with, I don't know, Mr. Terrific and a couple of other guys and Martian Manhunter, and they figure something out. I don't know.
Or even like, yeah, depending on the version of Power Girl, and God knows which one it was at this point. Like, I don't necessarily think that she has a kryptonite thing. So it almost feels like it's building up to like her going up to stop the asteroid on her own.
Mm-hmm.
And, because Superman can't, and maybe that would have been interesting. But I mean, it's not called Superman, Batman, Power Girl, I guess. So you want to have your main characters be the ones who solve the problem at the end. But yeah, it also just feels like we want that big composite Superman robot at the end. And so in that case, it does, like, they do at least have that excuse built in of him being like, yeah, I was like 8 years old when I designed this, and I was really into superheroes. So like, they tried to give it as best a justification as they can for, wouldn't it be cool if there was a giant Superman, Batman robot mecha that
I was going to say, I think at this point, this is such a like, and I mean this as a compliment, it is a goofy superhero story. Like, there is no suspend your disbelief that this could possibly happen. It's superhero, it's good versus evil. It's Batman and Superman against odds that, they shouldn't in theory be able to overcome, just continually overcoming them, and things just get more and more outlandish in the ways that they defeat and the way things that they survive, and it all culminates with Batman sacrificially piloting a giant robot mech suit into to defeat the gigantic kryptonite meteor. So it is a superhero story. It does have a warm place in my heart. If people don't like it, or if someone doesn't like it, I could absolutely like understand why, but it's near and dear to me. And I think compared to, as far as the plot is concerned, compared to what I think when I've rewatched Under the Red Hood, and we talked about it, that was a long time ago that we reviewed that movie. But the thing that I remember about that was it dragged because of how much of the original comic book that they kept in the story. And it was like, man, it feels like this could have been cut, or you could have figured out how to simplify this or make this this plot point not necessarily relevant or relevant to the visual storytelling here. You could have left this out and still had it be effective and interesting and still faithful to the original source material. It very much, even though there are some of those elements that are cut out, I think it is pretty faithful to it. I really enjoyed it. I think it's very funny, of course, the movie opens up with things that are, of course, it's like this could have taken place literally anywhere in the past 12 years in the United States. Here we have government distrust and riots happening and skyrocketing food prices and oil prices and general civil unrest and the government overreach and government maximizing their power over the U.S. citizens. And we have a billionaire that's that's president and using his power, unchecked to try and, become the hero and not allow other people to take credit for things. And we also have a billionaire that's trying to take advantage of a impending calamity in order to rebuild society and his image and what he thinks that society, like all of that literally has happened to us in the last decade.
Yeah.
Through various different public figures. So the fact that it kind of erupts into a outlandish superhero ending, it's like, okay, this kind of feels, even though this is escapism at its finest. It's like all of that other stuff feels very real. When they showed the $10 can of lima beans at the end when people were rioting as the meteor was headed towards Earth, I chuckled. I was like, $10 lima beans. I'm sure that's probably factual someplace right now. So this all feels very real, and the fact that whichever evil political candidate or political person in the White House that you want to Lex Luthor to be, you can certainly look at it through the lens of saying, boy, it's so great to see this guy get his comeuppance at the end and be shouting about God bless America and God bless him, and the guy that's yelling about how some people still put their country first, getting his super suit ruptured and all of this stuff. So there is some feel goods at the end to see the gigantic meteor get smashed and superheroes still win the day.
Yeah, to all that, like, yes, I think it's a very like high-minded idealist ending, in the sense of like people like Captain Atom and the other heroes that have joined with Lex throughout the movie. You could argue they were, just to spoil a phrase, just following orders of the president, right? And then at the end, they decide, you know what? No, it doesn't matter who's giving me this order. What's right is right. What's wrong is wrong. And then we see Captain Atom be the one to throw Lex in the back of the police car at the end of the movie. So it's like in a traditional political thriller movie, that might feel a little bit hokey and silly, but these are superheroes. I am a big fan of, especially I think DC's characters. Like, I love the aspirational aspect of that. I love the idea that whatever you've done yesterday, you can choose to be better today. And so I do love the idea that at the end, the good guys win, and the American people may have been swindled or affected by rhetoric for a while, but eventually they do see through the BS, and Superman and the other heroes and Batman are there to guide them, and there to be like, it's okay. I understand why you were confused, but here's what's actually happening. And then everyone else, stands up and says, all right, that's enough of this guy. Get him out of here. Like, maybe it's unrealistic, but that's the point. That's what I love about Superman as a character. Like, it is aspirational that he could inspire not just Captain Atom, but like an entire country of people to cheer on the president being punched in the face and thrown in jail. Like, there's an aspirational quality to this that I think we can't lose sight of, because it is fanciful. It is superheroes. We don't need to always try to imprint our real world morality onto these aspirational characters.
That's a great point. Getting away from what some people might be uncomfortable. We're not uncomfortable. What some people might be uncomfortable talking about. As far as I love that the portrayal of Batman and Superman here. We talked about it when we reviewed World's Finest, speaking of World's Finest, but World's Finest, or the Batman Superman movie a couple months ago, we re-reviewed that. But that obviously is the kickoff of their relationship in the DCAU. It is very much an adversarial relationship. They get some additional time across the series to kind of warm up to each other, and then eventually in Justice League, when we see in Hereafter, Batman really has a soft spot for him, even if it eventually turns cold again once by the time we get to Batman Beyond. There is at some point a defrosting and a warm up where they become friends. They're not just co-workers or people that are cross paths. This I love from the get-go, despite the fact that they are somewhat sparring verbally with some barbs here and there. They are clearly friends, brothers in arms against, united against evil. Superman's a little bit country, Batman's a little bit rock and roll. They're the odd couple. Batman's the dark, shadowy cloud, and Superman's the bright sun. They are certainly opposites when it comes to the way that they kind of see things, how they interact, the things that they choose to do. But they work as a team throughout this. They verbally support each other. They interact with each other as I know I watched there's a little featurette. I think it's on the DVD, it might be on the Blu-ray also, and it's on YouTube. But they talked about Bruce Timm, and I think it was actually Mike Goguen that was on and Stan Berkowitz that were on the little featurette. But they talked about how it was designed to be like a buddy cop type storyline where these two guys are playing off each other. They're old pals. Again, their personalities couldn't be more different, but they know each other and have worked enough with each other where, they're there when he zigs, the other guy zags, and, he knows what game plan to take when they're, calling out certain plays and whatever to take on their adversaries, whether it's calling down the heat vision or, as you mentioned, switching partners when they're taking on Captain Marvel and Hawkman. But it's very clear they have chemistry, they work well together, they're familiar. And then the line at the end when Superman thinks that Batman has sacrificed himself to destroy the meteor, when he turns and looks at Luthor and he says, "That was my best friend." The delivery, we'll talk about it later in voice acting, but it was I believe that. And that's such a cool thing that Superman looks at Batman and says, "That's my best friend." That's my guy right there. So I do love that the portrayal, and obviously this was rooted in the original material, but it certainly comes out here in how they chose to continue that in this portrayal of these two characters. This is what I like, especially after, eventually what kind of became in vogue of having Batman and Superman on opposite sides and fighting. That's fine. There's a place for that. There's a place for Dark Knight Returns stuff or Batman v Superman to an extent, but they should be friends, and there should be more than just work friends. These guys are close friends,
Yeah. And, I think about that as something going back to the comic version where one of the hallmarks of Jeph Loeb's work, and I think we talked about this when we reviewed the animated Long Halloween adaptation, which is also written by him. There's tons of internal monologue. Both Batman and Superman are narrating the story throughout basically all 6 issues of this, and a lot of that in the comic can come from those monologues of them speaking about, I don't necessarily agree with his message, but man, I respect him, and boy, does he get results, and all this stuff that we're talking about. Whereas here, and we'll talk about it later in voice acting, it really comes down to what they say and how they say it. Because we don't have internal monologues. We don't have the benefit of that to get across more of the, what the characters are thinking and feeling. So it's all got to be, that the bit where they're walking through the sewers and Superman's asking him whatever happened to Magpie, which itself is a reference to one of the 80s John Byrne Superman stories of one of the versions of how Superman and Batman first met. And just little bits like that, or Superman cracking jokes while Batman's trying to pluck the kryptonite out of his chest with the tweezers. And again, a lot of that dialogue is taken right from the comics as well, but I think they do a great job of establishing that. And also, again, a positive change, I would say, from the comics is in the comics, it's actually Captain Atom who pilots the robot to the asteroid and sort of sacrifices himself. Whereas having it, again, because it's this buddy cop moment, like you said, of Superman, has to basically stand by watching his best friend, who's just a man, fly off to try to stop this kryptonite asteroid, and then the fury that he kind of feels as a result as he is taking Lex apart through the city, and then him getting to fly up into space and save him and carry him down, and even to the point where the grimdark Batman, the mysterious creature of the night, is standing on a rooftop in the daylight, if just for a second, basking in these cheers from the crowds below as they sort of stand on the building, as they realize they've won and they've saved the day, and all is right in the world, at least for a moment there. So yeah, a lot of their dialogue and their sort of interpersonal stuff is really, really good in here, and I think adds a layer to the drama of Batman going up in the ship at the end to try to save the day. So yeah, for all that reasons, again, they're juggling a lot. It is very like I said, very condensed, and it moves a mile a minute. But I still think they did enough, and I think you're right that buddy cop angle they kind of took for Batman and Superman's relationship is pretty fun as well. So I ended up settling on a still pretty strong 7 out of 10 for my plot score.
Nice. I went just a tad bit higher here. Not, I don't think we can technically say it's disagreement alarm worthy, but I went a 9 out of 10. I think, nice. I think it's really good. I think I gave them some benefit of the doubt and looking at what they had to juggle, and while being able to faithfully adapt, I think I honestly, like, as you mentioned, in a perfect world, you don't have to waste, or not waste, but use the first 2 to 3 minutes of the movie explaining why Lex Luthor is president. Obviously, if this is being sold, mass marketed to a larger audience, Joe Schmo probably didn't know that Lex Luthor was president at that time in the comics, or
right,
that was a storyline. So you have to, as you mentioned, you kind of have to explain how and why. So yeah, in a perfect world, you don't do that. But I think just having that little 3-minute pre-credit roll explanation of where they are, where the country is, why it's kind of in the state that it is, who and what Lex has done, and then kind of tying that in with that opening scene of Superman kind of wrestling with the fact that he's maybe taken the back seat a little bit as far as saving the day, and has kind of been reduced to stopping normal day-to-day crimes versus earth threatening supervillains or whatever. Then it I think it rounds off pretty nicely. So yeah, I think in comparison, also fairly or unfairly, thinking back to some of the other movies that we looked at that have been adaptations, I think this one does a really faithful job, keeps the feeling really strong, and yeah, I enjoyed it. It doesn't, I think the action is a benefit. Some of these movies can drag sometimes if it's too heavy on the talking here. So this one takes advantage of that and really doesn't feel like it drags at any point. So yeah, for that reason, gave it just a little bit higher.
DC High Volume Batman. The Dark Knight's definitive DC Comics stories, adapted directly for audio for the very first time.
Fear. I have to make them afraid.
He's got a motorcycle. Get after him or I'll have you shot.
You mean blow up the building? From this moment on, none of you are safe.
New episodes every Wednesday, wherever you get your podcasts.
We'll move on here to visuals and animation. As mentioned, we have animation by Lotto Animation, another South Korean studio. They did a lot of work with Dong Woo. They did work on The Batman and Teen Titans, as well as some of the other DC feature films from around this area. And it's directed by Sam Liu, who has directed quite a few of these direct-to-video DC movies, so a veteran. He did a lot of work on Young Justice as well, I believe. But yeah, I mean, so as mentioned, this is an adaptation of a story illustrated by Ed McGuinness, who is probably one of the great comic artists, one of the most famous comic artists of his era. famous big again, not that dissimilar in a different way, although it doesn't really look like Bruce Timm's art in the same way of like all the dudes are big, muscly, like everybody's Mr. Universe. Everybody's big and bulky and defined, and they've got abs and muscles on their muscles and big square jaws, and all of the women, even the women are kind of built, like they're not. That's maybe the point of difference is how the women are drawn in this. I feel like that's maybe the bigger departure. They're not all kind of the dainty swimsuit model Bruce Timm pinup style. A lot of them are quite full figured. Even Power Girl. I mean, she still has the assets you would expect
for sure
Power Girl to have, but she's shown to have quite a bit of muscle definition herself, and but yeah, I think as far as adapting a 2D unmoving image into an animated feature, I mean it's pretty darn faithful, I think, to Ed McGuinness's style, at least as far as all the character designs go. Especially the Batman and Superman. I feel like there's one little change. Like I think they've given Superman like these very bright blue eyes, which I don't believe Ed. A lot of time Ed McGuinness's Superman didn't have eyes.
Correct.
He drew him kind of in that 50s style where he was always kind of squinting.
Yep.
And they kind of pay homage to that, I think, with Captain Marvel in this.
Correct.
But so that's maybe the most noticeable thing that reminds me that it's not Ed McGuinness drawing it, is that it's Superman has these big blue eyes. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, this is it's a bunch of muscle men punching each other, and that, like we said, it's so action heavy that they kind of get to pull out all the stops, and we get so many, both A-list and like deep cut DC characters in the fights with the villains, in the superhero team that Lex has under his control, and and even like I said, like the mech robots and stuff at the end with Toyman's factory. Like there's just a smorgasbord of unique visuals in this piece, but it's all sort of being adapted from this this beefy Ed McGuinness style. And I know, Cal, you mentioned there's a featurette where Bruce Timm talks a bit about what his sort of philosophy was when it came to adapting that art style into animation.
Yeah, he I mean, it's interesting because in that featurette Bruce talks a little bit about how when looking at Ed McGuinness's style, he talks about the muscle structure and the way that heroes are drawn, and obviously it's while I think at first glance you wouldn't necessarily say, oh, this is and somewhat related to a Bruce Timm style, but Bruce Timm compares it to taking the Batman the Animated Series style and his quote injecting it with steroids, which I think that makes sense in a way. Like they are still squared off, barrel chested, big broad shoulders, and you just take that and you start defining the muscles instead of making guys kind of squared off, and that's essentially what they did. And I remember kind of being a little bit disappointed. I think when the movie came out originally, it like not quite feeling like they nailed the adaptation of Ed McGuinness's style. And I was sitting here trying to think. I was like, is Ed McGuinness my favorite artist of all time? He's like, it's like Jim Lee, Jason Fabok, and him are all like kind of like you could probably interchange them 1 to 3 as far as my favorites are concerned. But yeah, he's up there. So I mean, it's a tall task to adapt that style. I can imagine, especially when you talk about animation and you have to start simplifying things, and you're going from one movement to the next, and the guy's got his rib cage is defined, and his abs all 8 of his abs are showing, and deltoids and thigh muscles and calf muscles and all this stuff. So I understand why they had to somewhat simplify it. Yeah, the biggest disappointment to me will always be that Superman has the big blue eyes. I think that's the defining trait of that Superman design, is the fact that he has the 50 squint. You do appreciate the fact that they did include it with Captain Marvel, who squints the entire time, which is great. But I kind of would have liked to have seen Superman have that feature at least once or twice if you're not going to have him continually use it. But yeah, overall, I do think the adaptation is pretty faithful as far as how do you take this very unique, memorable style and move it towards, you know, the animated world. I will say, I do believe, at least on the cover of one of these one of the original comics that Ed McGuinness did, we talked about it last week, but Superman had the gold S on his back at the time, does not have it on the in the actual movie here. So that was not included here. So maybe a tenth of a point deduction on my part there for not being completely true and faithful. But yeah, from everything from the amount of characters, and I'll let you go through the list of characters that we had here. Thankfully, the wiki page has all of our non-speaking cameos here of different DC rogues, both the deep cuts that we mentioned as we were doing our synopsis here, but also some of the other people that didn't quite get mentioned there. It's really neat. I mean, the Silver Banshee shows up. That sequence with Silver Banshee is really great too, because there's a moment where she opens her mouth to scream and they show Superman's face, and you just see, like, from the sound waves that are escaping, his face is kind of reverberating, and the details in his face, his skin is kind of being pushed back on his face as she's, you know, releasing this launch. That was great. There's the flying sequence at the end between Superman and Lex Luthor as they're flying from Japan back to the U.S. and through Kansas and eventually landing back at Metropolis. I thought that little, you know, flying bit was really great. Speaking of flying, the bit where Superman has to do the gigantic super tornado and spin around, I thought that was done really well. You do see some CGI elements here included with the mech and the of course the different helicopters and cars and other things that are included here. The movements are still obviously very CGI, but they at least cel shaded over top of it. It fits in pretty well as far as things are concerned. Look, of course, if you notice that a character moves a certain way, I think there's even maybe a bit in the Superman Lex flight chase scene where they're actually CGI with cel shading over top of it, which is interesting. But it doesn't. I don't feel it took away from the interesting nature of what that sequence ended up being. But little things that that are truthful to the original style. You have Batman's eyebrows, which kind of, with this little highlight in the middle of his bridge of his nose, create a bat. Like, he's got eyebrows on his costume that are kind of highlights, and then there's also another highlight right in between on the bridge of his nose, and if you look closely, it creates a bat symbol when it connects. Which is just another subtle little thing that was included with Mr. McGuinness's original style, and they kept for the adaptation here. Yeah, and the villains look really neat. I mean, Grundy and Mongol are just absolute behemoths. Yeah. Like, I feel like, are almost the most faithful characters to the Ed McGuinness style for the episode or for the movie. Like, they are just massive creatures. That sequence where Grundy is trying to drown Superman or Batman is really great too. Grodd looks creepy with the he has the spy versus spy Joker TNBA eyes with just the black soulless eyes with like the white dots in the middle of them, which are great. But there's a lot to enjoy here. Obviously, you could go blow by blow through the action, but I guess maybe I'll let you run down the characters here that we end up seeing here. Some you might recognize, and some you'll be going to the wiki to figure out who the heck is this.
That's right. Yeah, you mentioned in the visual. One of the things I love, you mentioned about Grodd and Mongol, and I think they do this in the comic as well, is that all the characters who are being controlled by Grodd also have that sort of inverted eye theory. Both Mongol and Grundy do. I think Nightshade's wearing a mask, so she doesn't really. But I thought that was a cool little trick there as like a visual nod to that. But yes, we have Metallo, of course, earlier, as you mentioned, much more of like a Terminator style, but maybe closer to like a combination of the classic Terminator and the guy that Robert Patrick plays because he can make all these different shapes and stuff. He's got this weird like spindly spine. That's what I kept looking at. The whole, even though he's making like chainsaws and hammers with his hands, which is cool. I'm just looking at like he has no rib cage, so he's just like he has this weird like snake spine, which I thought was a really neat bit on his design as well. Sure. But elsewhere, yes, as far as non-speaking characters to talk about, not counting like grunts we may have heard in one moment or two, we have Giganta, we have Nightshade as mentioned in that scene as well. She might get a line here or there. We have Bane, Black Manta, Black Spider, Brimstone, Captain Boomerang, but not like the classic Captain Boomerang. Captain Boomerang, the second one, who's the son, who came about when the original Captain Boomerang killed and was killed by Tim Drake's dad in a storyline. It's weird. That's what I was like when I saw. I was like, wow, that Captain Boomerang is in this movie. That's a really deep cut because like a couple of years later, they just kind of didn't use that character anymore. So it's like, wow, this is a very specific reference they got in there. But we have Catman, Cheetah, Copperhead, Deadshot, Despero, Eclipso, Girder, Icicle, King Shark, and then we got into some real deep cuts. Kestrel, who is a Hawk and Dove villain. He kind of just looks like Hawk, but in like a purple costume. Mr. Freeze, of course, Parasite, Shrike, who is a weird, I believe he is a Hawkman villain, apparently. I looked these up like just before I'm on air here. So we have Riot, who was a Superman character used only once or twice. He's kind of like a multiple man guy. Silver Banshee, as mentioned, and then we have Zeiss, who was like a Italian mob hitman in a briefly in Batman comics, but that like becomes more of a supervillain, I guess, as the storyline goes on. So some absolute banger deep cuts. When even when I'm like, I haven't even seen that guy. It's one thing to give me a character that like I've seen but I can't place the name. Like you're giving me stuff that like I was like, wow. A Hawk and Dove villain making it into this movie, and Captain Boomerang Jr. I was like, wow, they put some wacky choices in this sequence, but all a lot of fun, as you mentioned, and that whole sequence, which then immediately leads into a second action sequence with Superman creating the tornado to get away from them, and then which leads into a third, the Major Force action sequence on top of the Daily Planet, which is fun. As mentioned, with Batman kind of goading Major Force into attacking him more aggressively. The Hawkman and Captain Marvel stuff, like it's just again bang 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 because of how the movie is paced, as we talked about. It feels like we're forgetting things, and a lot of the action beats in the Hawkman and Captain Marvel fight are again pretty faithful. I think they're in like Tibet or something. They're in the snow. I remember that in the comics. So here they're just in the desert, which maybe makes for a slightly less interesting environment for them to fight in. But the bit of Billy Batson pulling out the Shazam trick on Batman and Hawkman having this big giant like Thanagarian power glove that he uses to punch Superman, like that's all stuff taken right from the comics as well. So yeah, some pretty cool stuff there as well. And yeah, I mean, it's again, just because there's so many, it almost feels hard to zero in on. I do think the end bit with the I did want to shout out, and I think this is maybe a combination of CG and 2D. The explosion when Batman blows up the asteroid at the end, I was like in awe of how they pulled that off. Mm-hmm. Because it you see like a blue streak hit it on one side and then exit out the other side, and then it explodes, and there's all these rings, and then you see like the big firebomb, and then you get this like cloud, this green sort of energy cloud that's sort of emanating off of it as it sprinkles down, and then you sort of pan out to where you see Superman looking up at it as he's still fighting Lex in the city. Like I was really impressed by some of the as they sort of married the CG and the traditional 2D animation and some of those explosions and things like that.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I'm usually probably the harshest critic out of the two of us when it comes to the CG and, using CG in the 2D animation world. But yeah, it's pretty, I understand again why you had to use it. And I think it's definitely used in that, in a couple of the fight sequences. I think it's definitely used in the like Superman tornado sequence. Also, you see some of the way that they pan around some of the characters that are flying. He flies around so fast that he like eliminates gravity in the area, I guess, or that, the tornado causes enough wind to lift characters off of the ground. So they're kind of floating and turning, and CG's integrated there that way as well. But yeah, I think the way that Superman also kind of goes up, gets the little like pod at the end, and then he just kind of floats down and he's kind of carrying that around. I don't know how much of that was 2D versus, CG being integrated into the sequence as well, but that looks really, really great. I think having the movie end with that sequence also is really great, with the sun coming up and Batman doing his classic disappearing act and Superman getting to reunite with Lois and all that is awesome. So yeah, there's a lot of things I feel like that look good about this. Again, feels like a Herculean type task to adapt something that is in such a recognizable style. Interestingly enough, I feel like we didn't at some point, because the stories, the more familiar DC comic stories from the comics started being adapted into the whatever verse it was at that time, whether it was the Tucker verse or later on, whatever the other whatever they called the last in the universe, shared universe together. We didn't get those styles necessarily adapted as much. When they did Hush, they didn't really adapt it into the Jim Lee style.
Right.
You don't have Long Halloween really wasn't adapted into the classic style for that either. So those are some of the things that kind of define those stories. So I think it's refreshing to kind of see this here. It looks like almost perfect, I'd say, with a few exceptions. So I ended up giving it a pretty strong 9 out of 10 for the way that things look. I think that there's a couple of interesting things. There's a moment where Batman shoots a wrist rocket. I don't remember that being in the comic, but he shoots like a wrist rocket in the middle of one of their fights that I thought was like, that's cool. Batman just turns into Boba Fett for a second and has a rocket launcher on his wrist when he's fighting Major Force. Like, okay, cool. That's pretty awesome. I think that the way that you're communicating this Lex Luthor character, and we'll certainly talk about it when we get to voice acting, but he's becoming more and more unhinged throughout the movie. I like that it begins to reflect in the way that the character looks, which also mirrors what happened in the comic, because at the beginning, he just kind of looks like a normal Ed McGuinness character, but as he continues to inject this kryptonite, he becomes, his eyes get bigger, his eyebrows get more expressive, he looks more mad, more crazy, he's losing his mind. And then by the end of the movie, he's just completely bonkers, and it is very expressive in the way that the character looks. So for all those reasons, I gave it a 9 out of 10. I think it's a really good adaptation. Tough task, that they were asked to do, and I think they did a pretty strong job at being faithful to the source material in a way that respects a pretty definitive style.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually also gave it a 9 out of 10. Like I said, I think they do as good of a job as you possibly could have adapting that sort of art style into this world, I think. So big ups to them for that. Again with so much focus on the big action beats and all of that as well. So from there, Cal, we will move on to music. We have, of course, Christopher Drake to thank for the soundtrack to this one here, as far as the composer goes. And luckily, as you alerted to me before we started recording, the soundtrack for this movie is available in its entirety, which is always a plus, because I got to be honest, if I had just watched the movie, I feel like I'm like 5 out of 10, got nothing to say about the music. because there's, again, something is exploding on the screen every 5 seconds. So I feel like there's a lot of the sound effects and dialogue and stuff are kind of covering up the score in some scenes, which is certainly not the composer's fault. So getting to listen to a few more of those pieces. One is that there's sort of a main title theme that also kind of works as like the Batman and Superman theme for the movie that comes back throughout as well. There's also kind of a lot of like Metallo has, as hard as it is to ever top the Metallo Superman the Animated Series theme, they give him sort of a similar, like, very relentless, like, march to his music, which I think is also, again, plays into maybe the Terminator bump 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 thing. It's not quite that. It's to the point where it sounds like it's ripping off the Terminator theme, but it has that sort of driving percussion behind it, where it feels like a killer robot is stomping towards you, which I feel like is an important part for the Metallo theme. So I feel like knowing that we got to listen to these tracks in isolation, at least some of them, I feel like that's a plus. So that's a plus for us getting to review music always, and
100%.
That's why we're constantly begging Warner Brothers and whoever has those libraries to release the full show soundtracks, which we still kind of haven't gotten, even for Batman the Animated Series. Like, we've gotten compilations, but not full releases for Batman. Basically, none of Superman, and at least in the digital music era. So, very, very nice being able to maybe appreciate this score a little bit more in isolation, and point out some things that we enjoyed.
100%. Yeah, I probably would have similarly just kind of had very little notes. It's difficult, especially when you have a 66-minute feature film here that you're reviewing, paying attention to dialogue, action, all that stuff. I mean, I'm complaining about the arbitrary rules that we created on the spot in order to judge our episodes or movies here, but it is a little bit more of a Herculean task, and certainly. I mean, this movie certainly has more of a cinematic feel to it because it's a movie. So a lot of the music in the background is played to punctuate dialogue and is certainly not as recurring. It's, this is a you have a sequel to this movie, an unofficial sequel to this movie, but I imagine we might get a different set of music for that. So it's not as if we have established character themes or things that we're going to recognize and pull out. So for that reason, you have to kind of zero in on some of those pieces. And when you don't have the ability to listen to things in isolation, it's a little more difficult. So yes, thank you, powers that be, the fine folks at Warner Brothers Discovery, for making this soundtrack available. So because of that, I will start with the low-hanging fruit, which is the main theme, which you hear immediately once the main titles come in. It is a very drum percussion heavy kind of, it definitely feels like a spy thriller type theme, it is a heavy on the drums, heavy on the horns, heavy on the strings. It just kind of feels like a marching type theme that is kind of driving, which is brought back again at the end during our credits, and is kind of played, I think maybe briefly a few other times in minor keys. So that is kind of the theme for our heroes in a way. I think the other pieces that kind of stood out, there's a piece specifically when Shazam, Captain Marvel, and Hawkman show up that's played. He has the theme that plays when Captain Marvel or Shazam is there, is composed in a very similar way to that main title, where it is heavy again on the percussion, but the notes that are played in the same tempo are different notes. So it's similar to the main theme, which kind of obviously plays into the fact that this character is similar to Superman. He's kind of this mirror image of Superman, modeled after him, whatever you want to call that character, inspired by that character, but he's obviously a different character. So you have a similar theme that plays during that fight scene, but it's not the same theme as for our heroes. So I dug that. Obviously the climax of the movie is Batman sacrificing himself in this super suit. So the chase scene that is occurring at the same time between Lex and Superman across the world. Literally, it has a nice chase sequence soundtrack to it, and then it kind of culminates with this high point of where the music crescendos and then begins to kind of come down, and you kind of set in with the realization that Batman may have passed, or Superman is dealing with this idea that he's sacrificed his life in this. So it's more somber, and then it kind of ramps up again as he begins to kind of take his anger out on Lex, and then it once again, as Superman learns that Batman might actually have survived, we get this crescendo as he flies up, and then as he's carrying the pod back down to Earth, you get this real calm, peaceful, tranquil theme of just Superman kind of flying through as he's kind of levitating, and people are watching him fly past, carrying this gigantic bat-shaped pod through the skies of Metropolis. It's really, really nice, like serene, peaceful kind of feeling driven through that piece. And then I think those are the things I think that kind of stood out for me, those three pieces, in addition to our main theme. And then, of course, as our credits roll and as Superman embraces Lois and our credits begin to roll, you do get the same theme once again, crescendos from the beginning of our opening credits. So I think there's some good music here. Again, it's not asked to do the same thing that we would look at on a week-to-week basis with a 22-minute cartoon. Certainly not the same role that a Shirley Walker or Dynamic Music Partner theme would play, or any of our other composers from those DCAU shows. So again, kind of grading on a curve here, looking at it. I still went with a 7 out of 10 for music. I think it's strong. It does impact the scenes in a way that is important. It's great that we can hear the pieces in isolation to really identify the feelings that they're communicating. So 7 out of 10 for me.
Yeah. I actually gave it the exact same score of a 7 out of 10 for similar reasons. I think I don't necessarily think this is a spectacular work, but I think it's like I said, getting to listen to it definitely made me appreciate it a bit more and be able to pull out specific themes, literally and physically, in the music that I wouldn't have necessarily been able to hear under the dialogue and sound effects and such. So 7 out of 10 from both of us for Mr. Drake. And that will bring us on to our final category, Cal, which of course is our voice acting. We have a giant cast here this week, Cal.
That's right. Yeah, we'll try and run through these as quickly as possible. I'll briefly mention, of course, with some minor grunts and groans, but still with some credits here, we have a guy by the name of Bruce Timm providing the voice of Mongol. He, of course, best known as the J-Man from Batman Beyond, I'd say, is his starring role. But no, of course, Bruce Timm. Andrea Romano also gets credited with a voice. She voices not only the computer, I think it's the files downloading or files deleted announcement from the computer, but she also voices some grunts and groans for Giganta as well. Briefly, I'll mention Michael Goff. He voices Hawkman, and uncredited as Captain Cold. He would probably best be known to Batman fans. He played Jim Gordon in the Batman Arkham Origins.
Oh.
So not a ton of lines for him to necessarily be graded on, but an interesting one there as well. As is our next voice, voicing Alfred Pennyworth, who gets a couple of lines. A very famous voice actor in a very small role for this, a Mr. Alan Oppenheimer. And Mr. Oppenheimer, a very famous voice actor in that he played, in the 80s, a near and dear animated series to a lot of people that probably listen to our show. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. He was responsible for playing Skeletor, as well as Man-at-Arms and I believe Merman as well. or I'm sorry, Cringer. He was not Merman. But he that recently reprised that role in the Chippendale Rescue Rangers movie, which apparently had a bunch of weird cameos in it. But yeah, so very funny. We get Skeletor himself plays Alfred. It's a different take. You know, he's fine. He comes across as Alfred to me, I think.
Yeah, no, he's solid. Like you said, he only has a couple lines here and there, but yeah, it's fun there. And then, like you said, just the fun of having such a reputable actor. I think we looked this up. We may have talked about him one other time. He's related to the Oppenheimer, also. Like,
oh yeah,
like father of the atom bomb, Oppenheimer, I believe. Like it might be like a second or great nephew or something. But yeah, I think there is a direct lineage there, which is a wacky fact to think about. That you go from nuclear bombs to a couple generations later voicing Skeletor. Who could have thought? Who's to say who made a greater contribution to the world? Honestly,
very good point there. Moving on, we'll talk about so the voicing Nightshade and Lady Shiva is Rachel McFarlane. She's noted, yes, if you notice that last name, obviously very important there. She is the younger sister rather of Seth MacFarlane. She also voices Haley Smith on American Dad. She's done a bunch of voice performances.
Oh yeah.
There. So that's just a fun one to throw in there. You know, Seth probably gets most of the fan mail if I had to gather there, but obviously not a ton of lines for her either. But again, another fun one there. We'll get into some of our DCAU characters here in just a second. We have Brian George voicing Gorilla Grodd. Again, not a ton for him to do, but maybe notably he would go on to then voice Alfred in the movie that everyone loved, Batman: The Killing Joke, in 2016. So he would return to play Alfred for that. Not a ton for him to do as Gorilla Grodd, I'd say, but certainly he's speaking through other characters, so that's not Mr. George's fault, but he doesn't quite get to show off the voice acting chops, I'd say.
Yeah.
We then will move to the Far East as we talk about the voice of Hero / Toyman, who is done by Calvin Tran. Looks like Calvin doesn't have a whole ton of like major roles. Not a ton here as far as his acting career is considered. I think his last appearance looks like maybe here in 2015, but he's okay. I think he's fine. Like, he comes across as nerdy teenager.
Yeah, it felt like, and I don't know if we talked about his visuals. It felt like maybe, I don't know if he's aping a specific like anime character, because he has like the classic like spiky hair and glasses. Like I thought, and he's flying around on a jetpack. So I was like, I don't know if he's supposed to be like Astro Boy or somebody. Like, there might be something more specific that he's homaging. So I don't know if that was sort of the idea for their take on the character, because I think in the comic he's just like a kid in a lab coat. Like he's he's still a kid and a genius. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, he gives him like a little bit of a, like, he's a little bit of a pomp. He's a little pompous for a 13-year-old. But again, if you're a 13-year-old that builds giant robots, then I guess it makes sense.
That is right. Moving forward, we have Mark Jonathan Davis as a newscaster. He has some credits on the Batman v Superman soundtrack, so very interesting there.
He's also the voice of the VR newscasters in Batman Beyond, apparently.
Oh, okay. There we go. All right. There we get some DCAU stuff here. So now we get into some real heavy duty DCAU stuff here. Before we do that, though, I will have to mention everyone's childhood favorite television host, or one of them, Butterfly in the Sky, I Can Fly Twice as High. Take a look. It's in a book, A Reading Rainbow. That's right. Host of that show, LeVar Burton, an absolutely legendary actor, obviously had a role in Star Trek, Roots, tons of other, voice acting bits, I'm sure.
Incredible cameo on an episode of Community.
I was going to say, for Community fans such as diehards as yourself, a very funny bit there. But yeah, it's interesting. There's a little clip of him in that featurette that I mentioned, and he talks about how he's close friends with Andrea Romano, and he said he can't say no to her. And when she called up and asked him to do a voice acting role here as Black Lightning, he said absolutely, I would love to. And so not a ton for Mr. Burton to do as far as there's another Burton that takes up a lot of the voice acting that we'll talk about. But LeVar here, his clearly his brother, LeVar, it's just a fun little neat little thing in the credits, I feel like to say.
Yeah. Basically, I think he might have 2 or 3 lines total. Like it's very quick, but yeah, it's just fun that he's in there. It's kind of like like when we talk about like the voice of Homer Simpson showing up to give 2 lines in that Batman Beyond episode or whatever. It's just a cool thing to have him in there. And just for the record, he should have been the host of Jeopardy when Alex Trebek passed away.
That's
but
right. You're
c'est la vie.
That's right. Yes. Here we are years later, and we are still mad about it. You can put that in the newspaper. Okay. We have this one's going to be an uncomfortable one to talk about. Allison Mack is voicing Power Girl here, and of course, best known for her role. Well, no longer best known as her role. Was once best known as her role on your favorite series, one of your favorite series, Smallville. She played Chloe Sullivan on Smallville, but probably more recently known for being involved in a cult that involved her being arrested and sent to prison. So this one's a little uncomfortable to talk about as far as her performance is concerned. It is fine. Say nothing of the person. She was I felt like a gifted actress. It's a shame that the decisions that she made, she had to suffer the consequences for the decisions that she made and the things that she got involved in. But I feel like her voice acting skills were not awful. I will say that.
Yeah, it's like you said, very, very weird thing to talk about with obviously because she was such a huge part of all 10 seasons of Smallville, and was the child actor before that. She had a Nickelodeon show at one point. So it was a wild thing to have that hit the news cycle, and what a terrible person. But as far as, and I know we had to talk about like Jeffrey Tambor, who's had some accusations. I'm sure there's other bad people we've had to talk about their voice acting since we've started this show, but like pound for pound, as far as total people's lives ruined, I think Allison Mack is the new reigning champion, and what a lovely distinction for someone to have. But
the performance is fine. That I think is the best thing that we can say, and we'll move on to our other voice actors and actresses here. Playing Major Force is Ricardo Chavira, and he actually, I was watching that little bit, and they have clips of him recording for the doing recording session, and he delivers a line and they say cut, and he said it's nothing like Desperate Housewives, remarking about how the deliveries, they actually have the footage of him recording that some people still stand up for their country, or put their country first, and the way that he delivers that and then looks in the camera and says this is very different than his role in Desperate Housewives. He was in 100, that show ran for 180 episodes for 8 years. So I imagine he was in quite a few of those episodes.
I was going to say, one of those shows that was like a phenomenon when it was on. Like, it doesn't necessarily have the footprint now,
right?
Like, it didn't have staying power, but for its time, it was like, as far as like a satirical, like salacious nighttime soap opera type show, it was a massive show in its time.
That's right. And as far as Major Force is concerned, I buy him as this like two-faced, power hungry and happy to kill people megalomaniac. So Great job by Mr. Ricardo there. We will move on to additional roles here. Now we start getting into some of the more recognizable voices here. We have Mr. Xander Berkeley, who plays Captain Atom. He's very interesting because we already talked about the visual nods to Terminator that were done with the Metallo character. But he apparently was in Terminator 2, cast as Todd Voight in that character. He also was in a couple of other memorable movies, Apollo 13, Air Force One. Yeah, again, another character whose voice maybe isn't distinct but is absolutely, you're like, I believe this voice is this character. Like, he's stoic enough, he's patriotic enough, and he sounds like this character should sound.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think he does a good solid job for sure.
Motoring on through here. All right, now we're in our final countdown here of more recognizable DCAU voices. Once again, playing Amanda Waller is the just absolutely incredibly talented CCH Pounder. She opens her mouth, she begins talking, and you're like, yes, this is Amanda Waller. This is what this character needs to sound like. Viola Davis can play her in live action, and CCH Pounder should always play her in cartoons. That is my soapbox that I will stand on here today.
Oh, totally agree. Yeah, like she doesn't have a massive role, and that's one of the things I kind of like, and we'll talk about that with some of our other actors in a minute here. But like, even though they are playing characters they've played before, she feels a little different than the JLU Waller. Like she is like, you feel like she does have like a respect and like she wants Lex to do the right thing. She kind of keeps going to him, being like, hey, we can fix this. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't have to blow up the world and ruin everything. You can still like it. And it feels like she has more of this role as like his closest advisor, as opposed to her being like this power broker in this, shadow cabinet of the US government that she is in JLU. She gets to, while still very much being, a classic, type A, 1A Amanda Waller voice actor. She's also like, this one's a little bit different, has a little bit of a different, we changed the recipe up just a little bit here, and I think she does a great job with that. And then again, she still gets to stand tall and be the one to, order the general to arrest Lex, and she's finally had enough at the end, and she refuses to sanction his buffoonery any further.
Yeah, there is a little bit of a nuance to that. She's she's still stoic, but she's not as she's a little more timid, I think, in this version of the character.
Yes.
Makes sense based on her role, kind of subjugated to Lex. But playing our this version of Metallo is another DCAU voice veteran, also probably more notable for his roles in movies and on television, of course. Scrubs Dr. Cox. He's also, of course, in Office Space. John C. McGinley doing our voice of Metallo, kind of hidden behind a little modulator thing and doesn't have a ton of dialogue here. But again, another fun one that, in that featurette that I keep referring to, Andrea Romano is asked about the voice actors, and she mentioned that when she was brought in as the casting director for that, she went to who she called the people in charge and really suggested, begged, asked that she be allowed to bring in a lot of these classic voices to voice characters that she was familiar with. And while Mr. McGinley didn't voice, Metallo in the animated series, it's certainly somebody that she was familiar with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I think he does a good solid job. He has one or two little like quips that he gets out, as when he's fighting Superman at the start of there. Not a huge role, kind of like Mr. like LeVar Burton, but I think he does a good solid job. And yeah, again, it's just fun that they snuck him in there, like you said, under that sort of robotic voice effect. And it's fun that he's in there as well as one of the other DCAU alumni.
There we go. Speaking of Burtons, the other Burton, maybe somehow for the DCAU, the more famous Burton, of course, being the GOAT, the legend, one of our favorite voice actors of all time. Corey Burton plays about 15 different roles, of course, in this, but the ones most notably Solomon Grundy. He has some sort of modulator or deepener that's done to his voice, some sort of effect that makes his voice sound really deep. But then we also get him as Captain Marvel. And while he's just doing a Corey Burton, like high-pitched Corey Burton voice, he's like, I think it fits for this character. I was not thrown off. I was like, for who this character is supposed to be in this version, I bought it. Even though you can point out, it's like, he's just doing Corey Burton's voice. It's just Corey Burton. I think it works for this. What was your thought hearing him do Captain Marvel?
Yeah, I thought I got a real kick out of that. I thought that was pretty hilarious. And it fits again, especially because as we mentioned in visuals, they kind of give him the extra square, squinting eyed, like 50s superhero look that they chose not to give to Superman. And that voice coming out of that version is kind of picture perfect because he's so like rigid and proud and like, yeah, it's like this is who would voice Captain Marvel in like if there was like a radio serial in the 1950s. Like this 100%. Is the voice of Captain Marvel for sure. So yeah, loved hearing Mr. Burton get a take. And yeah, he's usually villains and other like background people. So getting to play one of the heroes of the piece is fun, even if they're fighting other heroes.
That's right. And speaking of heroes, three people that, as far as voice actors are concerned, tend to be heroes of mine. The big three, wrapping up our voice cast here, it would not be a Batman Superman movie with Lex Luthor as a villain without Clancy Brown once again reprising his role as Lex Luthor. And then, of course, Tim Daly once again as Superman, and Kevin Conroy back as Batman. This is great. Hearing all three of these guys in the same feature, it doesn't at any point it feels like, if you like baseball, it's just like you go in your closet and you have that baseball glove that you've had for, a decade or something, and you put it on for the first time in a while and you're like, man, this just feels right. This is natural. It still fits your hand. You can, it still feels right. It's broken in. It's great. There's clips in that featurette. They got all three of these guys in the room to record at the same time for this. So a lot of the dialogue where they're playing off of each other, specifically, I think with Mr. Conroy and Mr. Daly, it feels like they're having a legitimate conversation because they're standing next to each other and they're feeding off of each other and they're using their actual conversation inflections and how they're communicating with each other. And then Clancy Brown, I think the fact that he gets to, this is the most, even though we get some unhinged Lex towards the end of Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, this is the most unhinged Lex that he gets, like when he gets to just be straight up, like completely brain gone, roid raging lunatic, right? It's just like he's a Saturday morning cartoon which absolutely fits this like third act of this movie of him just being absolutely bat crap crazy, like so fun. These guys are always a joy and a pleasure, and I think that really makes this movie feel important, memorable, whatever you want to say. It's great having these three guys, and I don't know what more adjectives I could throw at them.
It's hard to say anything you haven't said. Yeah, that's I think the thing that really stands out. One, you mentioned the Conroy and Daly getting to record together, I think really enhances that buddy cop feel that we were talking about earlier. And then just Clancy Brown as Lex, just unleashed in a way that maybe he never got to be in the original animated series or in JLU even, is just great fun. And he's so out of his mind by the end. It's incredible when he's shouting "God bless America, God bless me." It's like, it's so funny. Like Like he's like again, we've seen this man be literally sworn in as the president of the United States, like the height of what a man like Lex Luthor thinks of when he thinks of success, and all the way to the end of just being this insane, rambling lunatic in the back of a police van. It's like, and the desperation and exasperation in his voice by the end is so wonderful. So yeah, he's great. Actually, I think if you look at both the intro and the end credits, Clancy Brown is the top billed voice in this here film. So
wow, there you go.
Even over Superman and Batman himself. So yeah, it's this is really, I think, up there with any of it's again, it's different because it's a film. It's hard to rank it against a 22-minute episode, but yeah, this is up there with as far as his performances as Lex. I think one of his best ever for sure.
Yeah, it's great. And for all those reasons, that's why I felt like I had no choice. It's an all-star cast. Andrea Romano did it again. A perfect 10 out of 10 when it came to my voice acting. What about you?
Yeah, it was hard just based on our trio of lead actors to give it anything else. So I also gave it a perfect 10 out of 10 for my voice acting score as well. It's very little to be said. And yeah, just extra kudos to Andrea Romano for being the one to be like, you know what, let's get the band back together and do this right if we're going to do this. And
amen.
And yeah, totally worked out great. So with that out of the way, Cal, that will bring us towards our final scores. And tallying everything up here, I have a pretty strong final score of 33 out of 40.
I just differed with you really on that first category. So I ended up with 2 points higher, 35 out of 40. We can't really talk about rewatchability with a movie, although I guess you could. It's fun. It doesn't drag. If you like this story, I feel like I would put this in and watch it again. So as far as an animated movie is concerned, I give it 2 thumbs up. Sure, I'd rewatch it again. 5 years from now, I'll probably put this on and enjoy it, and listen to the big three with Tim Daly and Kevin Conroy and Clancy Brown once again. Just given they're all in another great performance.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for listening. However you do so, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on our YouTube channel, which of course you can find the link for in the description if you're not already subscribed. We do appreciate it, and that's a great way to support us and to help us out is to subscribe to us wherever you listen to your podcasts, and also to follow us on our social medias at DCAU Review on everything, though Instagram and the artist formerly known as Twitter certainly the best ways to reach us if you're trying to get something in front of us quickly. And there's also a couple of more direct financial ways you can support us, including through the aforementioned buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review, where if you become a monthly subscriber and at a certain tier, you actually get the ability to send us in a question, and that we will read on air and answer for you. And I believe our buddy Zach has another one this week, Cal.
That's right, Liam. And if you want to join him, don't forget, head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review or check out the show notes. The link is there as well. Zach asks this week, really our opinion on this version of Metallo. He was asking, is it hard for us to kind of buy that this version of Metallo was at any point human based on his abilities and his more Terminator-like makeup, whereas obviously the DCAU version was human first, brain placed into a cybernetic body, and he kind of, despite having super strength and being a robot man, he does sort of maintain some of that humanity aspects of it, whereas this is a little bit more fanciful. So great question, Zach. I think this Metallo is very different. It's a very different version of this character. I think even in reading the comic books, it was a little bit the Metallo character has changed in comics over the years also, like how they portray this character. While he kind of looked like in the original comics, he kind of looked like the DCAU version. He had the John Corbin skin and all that stuff. This one, being the Secret Service agent for a second and then immediately becoming half Terminator when his skin gets ripped off or blown off or whatever happens, kind of eliminates that idea that he was ever really human at any point. So I do prefer the DCAU version. I think it does add an element of danger certainly here, but it also makes him almost too powerful. Like, he's already got the kryptonite heart, so then making him a shapeshifter that can just materialize into any sort of item is a little bit too much and makes him a little bit overpowered in my book. What about you, Liam?
Yeah, like it's I'm kind of two minds, because it is a fun fight both in the original comic and in the movie here. I'm also partial to the action figure that they made out of the comic series, the DC Direct figure of that Metallo with the big bulldozer arm. Was one of my favorite
we
figures
could do a
maybe
whole
ever.
bonus episode of those figures.
Yeah, I think we did chat about that on our DC Direct retrospective some years ago.
Oh, you're right.
If we went
100%.
over the entire set, but
100%.
But we definitely touched on them way back then. Check that one out in the archives if you missed it. But yeah, I have some nostalgia for that style of this version of Metallo. I do think it's cool, but it does, I think, maybe to Zach's point, it gets so far away from what the general conceit of the character it feels like should be, which is like that he's just a guy with a kryptonite heart. Like,
right.
So it's, you give him so many extra tools in the toolbox if you do this, or you make him like a 15-foot high robot or something. Like they, some of the different weird things they've done with him over the years. Yeah, I think maybe it's a little bit overcomplicated. It creates some cool visuals, like him, making like I said, the bulldozer arm to bury Batman and Superman alive, but it does make him quite OP, as the kids said in 2005. So thank you again, Zach. If you would like to join us on Buy Me a Coffee and ask your own questions, you can go ahead and once again head to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review and join us today. There's also lower tiers if you're not able to or don't want to join regularly. You can donate just once or donate regularly at a lower cost as well. We appreciate everyone who helps us out monetarily that way. You could also head to our store, which is in the show notes as well. Pick yourself up a hat or a mug or a t-shirt or something. These are all great ways to support us. However you do, we appreciate that you have, and we hope you will continue to support us next week as we move into a new month and return to the proper DCAU after some time away next week.
That's right, Liam. And we will be headed back to the DCAU, but we will be headed not back to now, whenever now is, but we're headed to the future.
The future, Cal.
That's right, Liam. All the way to the year 2049 or 50 years from now, whenever now is. We're going to head back to cover some Batman Beyond and Zeta Project. Oh boy. For the month of April. If you're new to the program, it's going to be a blast. We will kick things off with an episode that actually involves both series. It's a crossover between the Zeta Project and Batman Beyond, with one of our final brand new episodes that we have left, Liam. Our next to last episode, actually, in the run. That is the episode Countdown, that sees Zeta and Batman once again interacting. Sure, there's going to be all kinds of crazy hijinks. Can't wait to review that one and see how that one goes, because I have not seen that one in a very long time.
Absolutely, yeah. It's been years. I think this was. I remember watching this at the time when the DVDs came out, and I was really confused why Zeta's head changed. So we'll have to we'll get into that as the Zeta and Ro character designs are now introduced back into Batman Beyond's world, and we'll have to note if there's any differences there. So excited to talk about Countdown with you next week. But until then, I'm Liam.
And I'm Cal.
And we'll talk to you next week on the DCAU review.
Bye-bye.
DC High Volume, Batman. The Dark Knight's definitive DC comic stories, adapted directly for audio for the very first time.
Fear. I have to
to make them afraid.
He's got a motorcycle. Get after him or I'll have you shot.
You mean blow up the building?
From this moment on, none of you are safe. New episodes every Wednesday, wherever you get your podcasts.